And pretty soon he receives an embassy from some of the Celtic tribes of Britain, who've heard of his plans from some merchants, and what do you know, these guys say they're happy to submit to Caesar, and he praises them and he sends them home. So Caesar's thinking, well, this is nice. They come to me. They want peace. Sounds like this Britain expedition might be easier than he thought. But just in case, Caesar musters 2 of his legions, 2 of his best, the 7th and the trusty 10th, and he requisitions 100 transport ships, as well as a few warships, and another 18 cavalry transport ships for his knights, to make a dignified appearance to his new allies. Caesar leaves from a place that's now near the city of modern Boulogne in northern France. Calais is where you'd usually cross now, but it was underwater at the time, nearby Dunkirk as well. The coast has actually gone out considerably in the past 2,000 years. And so Caesar sets sail around midnight. By 10 a.m., he makes landfall at the White Cliffs of Dover, which face to the south. Most likely he picked this spot ahead of time. He had, after all, sent a lieutenant there on a recon mission. And I think by his choice of this particular landing spot, it seems likely that he was actually expecting maybe even a warm welcome. But it turns out that there must have been some kind of a misunderstanding. The natives aren't so happy to see him. Quote, "There Caesar beheld the armed forces of the enemy displayed on all the cliffs. Such was the nature of the ground, so steep the heights which banked the sea, that a missile could be hurled from the higher levels onto the shore. Thinking this place by no means suitable for disembarkation, he waited at anchor until the 9th hour, mid-afternoon, for the rest of the flotilla to assemble there." End quote. So, seeing the cliffs lined with British soldiers in a supremely defensible position, Caesar decides to change plans all of a sudden, and he steers his flotilla, once they assemble, to break out suddenly, top speed, and head up the coast to the east about 7 miles. He disembarks his troops at last near modern Deal and Walmer, probably, which is a beach that faces east without any cliffs overlooking it. It's in the southeast corner of England. But these Britons on the cliffs, of course, they can see what he's doing, and they send their cavalry and charioteers along to stop the Romans. More on the charioteers in a moment. And so when Caesar gets to the beach, it's a little bit like D-Day. Quote, "Disembarkation was a matter of extreme difficulty for the following reasons. The ships, on account of their size, could not be run ashore except in deep water. In other words, the transports run aground long before they get to the beach. The troops have to jump out and wade to shore. Going on here, the troops, though they did not know the ground, did not have their hands free, and were loaded with the great and grievous weight of their arms, nevertheless had all at the very same time to leap down from the vessels, stand firm in the waves, and to fight the enemy. The enemy, on the other hand, had all their limbs free and knew the ground exceedingly well, and either standing on dry land or advancing a little way into the water, they boldly hurled their missiles, spurred on their horses, which were trained to do this. Frightened by all this and wholly inexperienced in this sort of fighting, our troops did not press on with the same fire and force as they were accustomed to show in land engagements. And so the Romans are taking serious casualties. They're getting pounded by spears and arrows as they slowly wade to shore. This is all made worse by the fact that Caesar's cavalry transports have gotten delayed by inclement weather, and they're nowhere in sight. Nobody's coming to save them. So here's how Caesar rescues the situation, by thinking quickly. Quote, "When Caesar remarked this, he commanded the ships of war, which were less familiar in appearance to the natives and could move more freely at need, to remove a little from the transports, to row at speed, and to move up onto the exposed flank of the enemy, and thence to drive and clear them off with slings and arrows and artillery." So these warships are rowing in from the side, and they've got longer range from things like these mid-size spring-loaded catapults, the tormenta, as the Romans call them. Going on here, "This movement proved to be of great service to our troops, for the natives, frightened by the shape of the ships, the motion of the oars, and the unfamiliar type of the artillery, came to a halt and retired, but only for a little space." So Caesar's warships are helping out here now, but as Caesar tells it, It's an individual act of valor that starts to turn the tide of battle. Quote, "And then, while our troops still hung back, chiefly on account of the depth of the sea, the eagle-bearer," so the army standard-bearer, "of the 10th Legion, after a prayer to heaven to bless the legion by his act, he cried, 'Leap down, soldiers, unless you wish to betray your eagle to the enemy. It shall be told that I, at any rate, did my duty to my country and my general.' When he had said this with a loud voice, he cast himself forth from the ship and began to bear the eagle against the enemy. Then our troops exhorted one another not to allow so dire a disgrace, and leapt down from the ship with one accord. And when the troops on the nearest ship saw them, they likewise followed on and drew near to the enemy." End quote. Do you think one man can turn an entire battle? I believe this. And this act of the eagle-bearer, if that doesn't show you the incredible power of symbols, I don't know what will. But even with this brave standard-bearer leading the charge into the waves, it takes a very difficult battle to secure the landing. And the Romans finally get enough infantry to shore to form ranks and charge the enemy and put them to flight. But since they don't have any cavalry and the Britons here are either mounted or in chariots, the Romans can't chase them very far. But all the same, with difficulty, Caesar has thus established a beachhead. And the native leaders now come with another embassy, tail between their legs, and they say, "Forgive us, Caesar. It was the rowdy multitude who forced our hand and made us attack." Caesar admonishes them for going back on their word, but he says he'll forgive them if they supply some hostages. So the Britons get about doing this, and some hostages they turn over immediately, and some they go off to fetch from a few days' journey away.